Hi everybody, Sniper69 here. Today I'll be showing you an independence commentary slash kind of a small quick review slash how to grind through low tier carriers, which are not particularly fun, to be honest. You can club with them if you know what you're doing, and you can have lots of fun like that. But if you don't know the weaknesses of your carrier, if you don't know what you can do and what you can get away with, then low tier carriers are not particularly fun, especially after they nerfed the tier 4 and 5 carriers and removed manual dropping. I understand why they did it, because it was very easy for good players to absolutely club in those ships. It's very little, there's very little an enemy CV can do when when playing against a competent enemy carrier that's running, 2 torpedo bombers on the Zuiho or 2 torpedo bombers on the Hosho, which were the favourable ships to club with, and then sometimes you get the air supremacy, air superiority Bogue, which is another story in of itself. So this game I'm playing the Independence. This was about my second last game in this ship, and I launched my planes, and I decided, I decided to go for the CV snipe. And I'm flying my planes down the southern border. I could have gone for any of their ships. Fortunately, there was no significant AA ships like a Cleveland or anything, so I could have just gone in and fought one of their ships, dropped on one of their ships. But I decided that I'm going to go snipe the snipe the enemy CV, and I'll go through some of the reasons why I decided to do that a little bit later. But the first thing I want to do is chase off this fighter. So the enemy CV could be at the moment a 111 or a 201. Independence, and in either case, you want to take down these fighters. So your strike has space, and I get a good strafe, or I get an okay strafe in killing 2 of his fighters. I don't overly commit, and I try to dodge his strafe, but then I lose 1 plane, which is okay, and then I try to counter strafe from behind, but then I mess up and he's shooting down my planes from behind, and I realize, well, crap, I'm in a really, really bad spot, and I'm really, this fighter duel was in my favor at the start, and I've thrown that, that advantage. So I decided I need to commit for the snipe, because you don't want to be in a fighter disadvantage, especially because the enemy CV is also a 111, and in this game where there's no real anti-aircraft cruisers to fly my planes over, I don't really want to engage in a slugfest, especially when the Independence only has a very limited hangar capacity. There's only, I think the hangar capacity on the Independence is about 36 planes, which basically means you have 1 replacement of each fighter, torpedo bomber, and dive bomber. So the reason why I go for the snipe is, as awful as this sounds, I actually looked up the enemy CV stats, and I saw that he averaged 14k average damage, and he had some low win rate, whatever. And I realized that the enemy CV is probably not very good. Either he's not very good, or he can't drop. So I start with my dive bombers, get 2 fires. He's forced to damage con, and I get a good nice 9,000 alpha strike. But unfortunately, his fighter does make it back in time. But I'm very committed to the snipe, so I need to get the strike in. And I launch my torpedo bombers from a distance, so that when he turns in, the torpedoes should hit. So I manage to get 1 hit, and I get 2 hits, and I get a flooding. The most important part is the flooding, because with that flooding, it means that he's taking damage over time, especially since he's already blown his damage control on those 2 fires. And it's important to note, a lot of CVs, they might damage. Say you're going for a snipe, and you only get 1 fire, they probably won't damage control for 1 fire. But if they get 2 fires, if they don't damage control, what happens is that they'll take too much damage, in that 1 minute which they don't damage control, and they will die to a pure torpedo alpha strike. Forget the flooding; they will die to the torpedoes. So those 2 torpedoes hit on that Independence, and he took like 10k damage just from that, just from the 2 torpedoes. Now imagine, by the time, he waits for the damage control, he waits for the fires to burn out. I'm able to bring my fighter plane down south, lock his fighter plane, and then go for the snipe with the torpedo bombers. So he floods out, and HP management is very important when playing a carrier, especially when you are on the receiving end of a snipe. and unfortunately my division mate, he eats one of the torpedoes. That strike was what do you call it? An auto drop because I already killed the CV, and these dive bombers are also an auto drop, but because I'm chasing them down, they die. So the enemy CV is taken care of. I pretty much have free reign considering there's no AA cruisers. I miss my strafe, but I'm not really too worried at this point in time. And I especially want to help my division buddy help my division buddy out. So there was a DD on B cap. You can see the last known position. So I know he's around B, and a smart DD player would probably try and torpedo my friend, especially after he's already used damage control. So I'm scouting around with my plane. I spot the Shiratsuyu, who is like very low, and I'm trying to see if he's launched torpedoes. Yes, he has. And the New Mexico is not a particularly agile or fast ship, so he's my division mate is probably dead. So my planes are loaded, and they're going towards the. My planes have relaunched, rearmed, and they're going towards the middle of the map. I'm just gonna have my fighter around that smoke just to spot that DD, whilst I go for another strike. So I see a Miyoko, and I say, Miyoko. I could strike a Miyoko, but when I go for the strike, I see the Miyoko has his fighters up, and he also activates defensive fire. And the Miyoko, even though the IGN cruisers don't have, spectacular anti-air, you don't want to drop into defensive fire, especially against a cruiser which is a tier higher than you. But I see this Congo which is by himself, reversing. So I decide, okay, I'm going to drop this Congo instead. I line up, take my time, because he's not moving, and I get 2 fires. Perfect. So this Congo, he's seen my torpedo bombers, but he's got 2 fires on him, and he either lets the fires burn, and I get free damage, because I'm not in a rush with my torpedo bombers, or he damage controls, and I go for the strike, and he floods. So I'm just moving my torpedo bomber around, just waiting, just seeing, until he uses damage control, and then my damage counter is not ticking up, so he's used damage control. And I'll follow up with a strike with the torpedo bombers. Now, whilst we wait for the strike, whilst we wait for the strike, I'll just carry on about sniping the enemy CV. Now, sniping the enemy CV only really works in low tiers. Before in tier 4 and 5, before the changes to manual drops, it was very easy to do if you're semi-competent. It sounds very easy to say semi-competent, but like if you know what you're doing, if you're familiar with the UI, if you're familiar with how the planes work, the torpedo arm distances, if you're familiar with your rearm times and the speed of your planes and which cruisers or which ships have good anti-air and which ships you should avoid, therefore, you can a semi-competent player can snipe an enemy carrier. However, with the changes in with the manual drops in tiers 4 and 5, it's very hard to do that. However, in tier 6, tier 6 is probably the last tier where you can pretty much almost guarantee a snipe, or be successful with the snipe. Mainly because in tier 7, a lot of like the Hiryu gets 2 fighters. Competent Hiryu can just keep one fighter over near his ship and defend himself, whilst using the other fighter to bait the enemy fighters or defend other ships. A Saipan has 2 fighters. It's pretty hard to drop a Saipan or snipe against a Saipan, a competent Saipan, because he'll just chase down your planes. A Kaga again also has 2 fighters. I mean, the Kaga is not the easiest ship to snipe as well. It's got a large HP pool, has a torpedo belt, and the other ship, the Ranger. If the Rangers strike, then by all means you can go for a snipe against a strike Ranger with a Hiryu or Saipan or Kaga, but if the Ranger is air supremacy, which is what you see a lot of Hiryus go. I mean, if the Ranger is air supremacy, which you see a lot of Rangers do, because the strike gives you no defense against a Saipan or Hiryu or Kaga, you see a lot of Rangers go air supremacy just to keep that 1 or 2 torpedo bombers alive, dive bombers alive, so that you can do something, right? In that case, it's also becomes pretty hard to snipe, because the Ranger has, the two Ranger squads with 7 fighters each are very strong, and can easily fight, a squad of Hiryu fighters or a squad of Kaga's fighters. I'm not too sure about how it goes with the Saipan, because I've just recently unlocked I've unlocked the Ranger. I haven't bought it yet. I haven't played it. I'm not looking forward to playing it. But in this game where the enemy CV has been sniped, we were behind a little bit. We lost 2 DDs at the start, but now we're coming back. There's no real AA ships, and because there's nothing really to stop me, my strikes. There's nothing to stop my strikes. This is the power of sniping the enemy CV. If you can do it, if you can get to a stage where you're competent enough to, handle the UI, handle, how the torpedo armament distances and stuff, you can do, you can be quite successful in the lower tiers, around tiers 6, basically tier 6. To be honest, the Ryujo is probably the better CV at tier 6. Its strike potential is phenomenal with 2 torpedo bombers, 2 dive bombers. Yeah, it's 1-2-2, which means that in the case of the Independence, right? The reason why I chose flooding was because it lasted long. As in, like, the reason why I started with dive bombers was because flooding lasts longer, and I'll be able to do more damage over time. Whereas with the Ryujo, since you have 2 dive bombers, you can start off with 1 dive bomber, 1 torp bomber, and then force his damage control because he's got fire and flooding, and then follow up with the second dive bomber and second torpedo bomber, and you get fire and flooding, and the enemy CV dies even faster, right? Because he's got fire and flooding after he's blown damage control. And in terms of sniping the enemy CV, the Ryujo is probably far better. And in terms of defending against a 3-1-1 Ryujo is far better. The only issue with the Ryujo is that if the enemy CV tries to snipe you in return, or if you're on the receiving end of a snipe in a Ryujo and you misplay with one of your fighters, it can be very hard to survive. There was a ranked game, I think at the start of this ranked season, where we had a 3-1-1 Ryujo in our team, and then the enemy team had a 1-2-2 strike Ryujo in ranked, and the enemy CV was really good. I knew straight away from the matchmaking monitor, and I could see his stats. But the enemy CV played it really well, so he flew his planes behind, off the border of the map. Didn't even know his planes were looping behind. Well, I knew, because no one had seen his strike yet, so obviously he's going for a snipe. And the enemy CV had had his planes spread out. One fighter looking for a DD, one fighter somewhere else, and then one fighter near his ship. And the Ryujo literally baited his own fighter. He literally just suicided his fighter in. The RCV decides, okay, I can kill his fighter. I'll bring in my second squad, and he didn't even touch his third squad. And what that meant was that our Ryujo had no AA cover, and he ended up getting sniped, because there's nothing you can really do when your fighters are committed somewhere else, and there's a strike coming in. And we ended up winning that game actually, because we just kept even though our CV died, as a consequence, we were able to focus down the enemy team and be able to take both caps, and then just keep both caps, and the enemy CV ended up losing, which is quite funny, to be honest. But in this game, I've killed the enemy CV. I did heavy damage to the Congo, and I got 3 fires on the Nagato with that dive bomber strike. Ended up getting Witherer. I only managed to get 2 kills, but I've done a lot of damage. 136k damage so far with 12 bomb hits, 7 torpedo hits. Didn't kill many planes because I killed the enemy CV, right? You can imagine that the 12 planes the 18 planes still in his hangar went down at the bottom of the ocean. So it's been a successful game, to be honest. Managed to get it flooding with that 1 torpedo bomber, which I expected, which is probably going to die to Nagato. I mean, Nagato has tier 7 anti-air, tier 6 planes. It's not going to, you shouldn't expect your planes to come out completely unscathed. But the game's pretty much about to end. Got high caliber, 150k damage, and if you know what you're doing, a CV is a very strong ship. So here are the scorecards, and in terms of improving carry gameplay, if you're a new carrier yourself and you want to get the hang of it, there's nothing wrong with playing co-op. I played heaps of co-op games in my Hosho, in my Langley, and in the Independence. I actually skipped the Bogue because I couldn't play it, which is horrible. And I played a lot of co-op games just to get the feel of the ship and to grind through the stock modules and stock planes and stuff. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll have another Independence game in the next couple of days, just to show some of the issues with double carrier gameplay.